I only started achieving anything when I was 52.
Mm.
And I think that's quite a lot older than you are. So here's my point of saying that.
Hi,
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Okay, so I have a question about feeling guilty and regret about like past like decisions, things that I didn't do at that time.
Mhm.
So basically the context for this is that, and I've talked about this like before, I've always thought that I was going to have like the life that I wanted like years ago. So for
Mhm.
me, I have this like timeline of okay, between like 2023, I need to have my business, like my house, like all the things that I wanted. And it didn't happen that way. And now I see, so the people that I follow that have like the life that I want, all of them, they are that age or they did accomplish those things at that age
Mhm.
between 20 and 23. And I keep seeing this like pattern, and I feel like so bad about myself because I wasn't able to do that, you know?
Mhm.
And I can't like stop like thinking about this, and I need
Mhm.
please with that.
Of course, of course. So well done for being here and reaching out for help. So I want to answer the logical conscious mind first to get that on board. My first question for you is, do you know any people who are like the opposite? Like they are much older than you and haven't achieved anything that they wanted to achieve?
Yes.
Okay. So I can tell you for a start, myself, I only started achieving anything when I was 52.
Mm.
And I think that's quite a lot older than you are. So here's my point of saying that is that, and there are probably a lot more of people who don't achieve what they want to achieve at a young age than there are those who do. However, because of the programming you have, your brain is deliberately filtering out anyone who doesn't fit into that and really laser focusing in on those who fit that very narrow mold. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's my like my brain and also like algorithm of the platforms that
Mm-hmm.
I use probably
Mm-hmm.
showing me those people because they are my age, you know?
Right. Right. Yes. And for the algorithm to do that, of course, it's doing that because originally those are the posts that you were following and interacting with,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
yes,
So it's a kind of, a cycle, right?
yes,
So understanding that the reason it's appearing that way is for those two main reasons is that your brain is deliberately focusing on that and filtering everything out because number one, that's what fits in with your programming and that's the so-called danger. And our brains are designed to focus on the danger. So there's that. And the second thing is the algorithm thing is the fact that because you were originally drawn to those and interacting with those, then now the algorithm, of course, is presenting that. So what you are seeing, all of these people you are seeing who have achieved such success at such a young age, that's not reality. That's a tiny little sliver of what there is, and it's magnified because everything else is filtered out. Does
yes,
that make sense? So grasping that logically is the first step so that you're not buying into it and believing it, that everybody else is doing this and I'm not. Does
yes,
that make sense?
yes, absolutely.
Good. So it's a similar kind of, when I worked with Swasti on the exam anxiety and that, and she was feeling anxious and everything because she had to resit the exam, and there was all of that around that. And then it turned out the majority of the class had to resit the exam. So,
Yes,
but her brain had kind of chosen the perception automatically that there's something wrong with her and everybody else is better.
yes,
So this is
absolutely.
a similar thing. Very good. So we understand that consciously first. And now let's look at the rest of it. So again, for the conscious mind, what I would do if I were you is I would broaden your exposure a little bit to
Mm.
other people so that you are experiencing a little bit more of a variety of people who
Yeah.
are trying, people who are older and still trying, just for a little bit more balance. Okay,
Mm.
so that the ones who are successful are more for inspiration and like, oh, wow, well, if they can do it, I can do it, rather than a comparison.
Yes, absolutely.
Compare yourself to people who are worse than you rather than better than you, and use
Yes.
the ones who are better than you for inspiration of what's possible.
Mm.
All right.
Absolutely.
So that's on a practical level, something you can do. So now let's look at the references. So think about the fact that, so as you see these people and you
Mm.
compare it to yourself and you feel you should, or why haven't you, or whatever's there, what are those feelings or emotions there?
I feel really sad. I feel like there's something wrong with me
Mm-hmm.
because I tried my best and I couldn't, and they did, and they didn't
Mm-hmm.
try their best, or it wasn't that hard for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
And how
there's
do
a,
you know it wasn't hard for them?
I don't know. So I don't know. I know
That's
that
right.
maybe it was hard for them,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so I've always like very like familiar with the feeling of struggling for achieving something, like that
Mm-hmm.
feeling of just doing like lots of action and like just trying and not getting
Mm-hmm.
what I want. So I'm familiar with that, and I know
Yeah.
like other people, they are not that familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say that.
Okay. Now, of course, generally speaking, people don't post those kinds of experiences,
Yeah, that's true.
especially people who are in business and, they've got an image to uphold. Very few people post about terrible times, but I can guarantee that if they are successful, they have absolutely gone through terrible times, because that's life. Life is very up and down, and we're all
Yes.
human. Just because you're not seeing it or they're not speaking about it or posting it doesn't mean in private they haven't. So I'm thinking of myself as an example. When friends of mine, when I shared on Facebook, I've had plenty of them, but particular suicidal time, my friends were shocked because they had no idea. They had no idea that I was going through any of that kind of thing, because I never told anybody. But it
Yeah.
didn't mean I wasn't going through it. And it was extreme. It's close, almost taking that step of suicide. So that's just one example of how we never know what someone is going through, because we can't see behind the scenes. All that is to say is, again, what your brain is automatically doing is comparing you to an ideal that doesn't exist.
Yes. Mm.
Right. So it's like the magazines with the airbrushed, perfect bodies, and everybody, comparing themselves to that. It's not real, it doesn't exist. So you
Yeah.
can't possibly live up to it. And in the same way, there's no one who is that successful who it's been completely easy the whole way. There
Yeah.
will be struggles, financial struggles, physical struggles, emotional struggles, psychological struggles, suffering. There'll be all kinds of things, combination of things for each person who's reached that level. Now, many people stop when they hit those bumps, because they think, well, now I can't do it. These other people are doing it and I can't. And so they stop. And then there are others, like the ones you're looking at, who have found a way to get around it, go over it, go through it, or pick
Yes.
themselves up again and keep going. And
Yes.
that, how a person handles those storms and those bumps, will be determined by their programs.
Yes.
So getting the reality check of what I'm looking at is not necessarily reality, that will help to give you the encouragement to keep going. And then, of course, changing the references is what's going to help you make that automatic, where your brain is then automatically keeping you in alignment. So where I want to go next is I want to ask you, what's wrong with you not having achieved what you wanted to achieve by this age? What's the problem with that? What's the consequence?
I think it's because it means for me that I don't know how to explain this, but I feel like disconnected from myself, because it's like the purpose of being here, that is like having this experience, it's not going to happen. So I'm just here like floating, like I'm not doing, like I can do what I really want to do. So nothing else matters because I don't have the power to create anything, something like that.
Ah, interesting. Okay. And again, the reality is that things happen, life throws plot twists into our lives sometimes. So sometimes we can't do what we originally wanted to do. There are kind of athletes, who get injured and their passion was this particular sport and they physically can't play anymore. So then they have to find something else that will fulfill them. And many of them find a passion even greater because they've allowed themselves to consider something else. But while we are focused on the one thing and insisting it has to be this way, this is the only thing, this is the only option, it's the only thing that makes me happy, or it's the only thing I'm meant to do, any of that, well, then that's what we get to do, is just sit and look at it without actually experiencing it, right? So it's, I know I've used this analogy before, an airport. If you go to the airport and then you find out they've changed the gate, the flight is leaving from a different gate. But if you sat at the same gate and insisted the plane had to leave from there, you would never get to your destination. You have to adjust. And for me, I was convinced and determined that being an actress in LA, that was my dream. That was all I ever wanted to do. It was my passion, it was my dream, it was who I was. It was just, I couldn't imagine ever doing anything else. And now, because I pivoted, because I changed programs, changed my childhood memories, all of that, this work is infinitely more rewarding, more satisfying, more wonderful than that could ever have been. But I couldn't see that from back there. And even if I was offered that opportunity now, I would definitely not want to do it. I love what I'm doing now. So the reason I'm saying that is just because it looks a certain way right now from where you are, doesn't mean it is. And it doesn't mean there's nothing else.
Yes.
So what you end up doing, loving, enjoying, feeling fulfilled in doing, that kind of thing, may be something different. It may be along the same lines, but just in a way you have never thought of before, or it may be a completely different thing. And the key is to focus in on the core of you rather than the details. So you can use what you love and what you really want to achieve, look at that, and then boil it down to how does it feel, the very inside. In other words, let's say it's business success in some way. So you can imagine, okay, so if I could wave a magic wand and then that would be the result, what would that feel like inside me? And you can use details just to access that feeling, but then let the details go and just focus in on the feeling inside you. So the excitement, the joy, the gratitude, the fulfillment, the sense of achievement, whatever that is, bring your focus to the physical feeling of that inside you. And then imagine that feeling as like a power or a ball of light, and recognizing that none of those things have created that feeling. It's just the connection of those particular neurons in those particular patterns produce some chemicals that gave you that feeling. That means that that feeling is created inside you and you can create it without the outside. It's an illusion. It looks like you need the outside in order to create that feeling, but feelings are chemicals. So, and feelings are created by connections between neurons. Those chemicals are created by connections between neurons, not by anything outside of you. Those connections between neurons happen in response to what you're experiencing around you. But that is based on your references.
Yes.
Does that make sense so far?
Yes, that was like so good. I feel much
good.
Better.
Good job, sweetheart. And so what I recommend is creating a touchstone for that end result feeling. Whether it is what you thought it would be or something completely different, it doesn't matter, because if you boiled it, and for those who are new, I'll put a link to Touchstones in the description of this video as well. So boil that right down to just that feeling with that power, that kind of light, that power, put a phrase to it and keep practicing that. Put your full focus on that end result, and everything else will fall into place to create that end result regardless of the details. All right, that's that. And then, of course, let's look at the childhood stuff now. So with the childhood memories, as you think of your childhood now, is there anything obvious that comes to mind? regarding how you feel about, feeling guilty or feeling that you haven't done enough, that kind of thing?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, it was like a theme in my life, but I don't have like a picture or an image now of that.
Nothing
I don't.
specific. Yeah. So in that case, can you imagine the little you? All right. So just picture the little you, any age. And what's the expression on her face, first of all?
She's confused. I'm like, bored.
Okay. All right. And can you ask her what she needs that would prove to her that she is valuable, loved, safe, amazing, exactly as she is, even if she never does anything, just for existing?
I'm thinking about like a ball of light that has those things in it.
That's exactly what I had in mind. Funnily enough, that's what I had in my picture in my mind. So yes, give her that ball of light, or imagine that ball of light shining out from her. That is who she is. All right. That's her essence. And nothing can change that, because that is who she is.
Yes.
Now, sometimes our experiences, the things we experience, the things that happen to us or happen around us, create covers that start to cover up that light. And so it dampens it. And especially if we're too bubbly or too shiny, sometimes the adults around us, our light blinds them. And so they make sure that light is covered up, but the light is still there, which means it can be, you can start to take those layers off, and then the light can still shine.
Yes.
How does that sound?
It sounds really good. I could love to just be able to like do something or give her something like this that could have like a very like significant change on her,
Yeah. Good idea. What can that be? So give her something. It can be a magic wand, or it could be an accessory or a cloak, or it could be a toy. Could be something she can wear, like a necklace, or it could just be literally a ball of light that she puts into her heart.
Yes, probably the last one.
Yeah, very good. And now let's level that up a little bit. Let's take that a little bit further. And I want you to imagine that little you, and in front of her are your parents, and they're facing her, and behind each parent are their parents and all the generations going back. And as you look at this crowd of ancestors, you notice that right from the back, as far as you can see, on both sides, there's that ball of light is being passed forward from the previous generation to the next generation to the next generation, all the way up to your grandparents and each of them. And the balls get combined. So each of them combine their balls of light, and then they hand them to your parents, and your parents combine their balls of light and they hand them to the little you, and then she absorbs it. So not only do you have that ball of light, but you have it coming back all the generations. And that's the gift that's handed down to each generation and to you. How would that feel?
It feels really good. The little me, she asked me like, okay, are they only going to pass me like the good stuff, right? And I was like, yeah, only the don't worry.
Good question. Yes, absolutely. It's only the good stuff. And you can tell that it's only the good stuff. And you can explain this to that child. You can tell it's only the good stuff because those lights are so bright.
Yeah.
There's no darkness in them.
Yeah, only like the best gifts. Those are the only ones that I want to pass.
That's it. Exactly. Exactly. So how does that feel now, if you imagine that?
It feels good. It feels like empowering. I feel like
Good.
More like energetic.
Good. And then now, of course, we know life happens. And as we go about our day, the challenges come up and things happen that disappoint us, or things that we were wanting to happen don't happen, and that kind of thing. So see how aware you can be, and you can put alarms in your phone or post-it notes around you. Find ways to remind yourself to pay attention and keep bringing your focus back to that feeling of that big light inside you that is always shining no matter what's going on around you.
Yes.
And what tends to happen is we tend to dim our light by bringing our focus onto the problems and the challenges and what we're worried about, what we're frustrated about, and that kind of thing. And all you need to do is imagine that you're saying to yourself, turn the light up, and like a dimmer switch. And here's a nice analogy, actually. We can't see unless we've got this bright light. Keep reminding yourself to make sure you've got the light turned up. And the way you know is you feel it. So you imagine you've got this light inside you. You're going to turn the dimmer switch all the way up and it's going to shine out from you. And then you can see what needs to be done or what, decisions to make and that kind of thing. But make sure you turn the light on first. Turn the light up first.
Yes.
How does that sound?
It sounds really good. I've been reading a lot about like personal development. And like everyone from the people who talk about science, about the nervous system and having your parasympathetic like system on and dopamine, and the other people who talk about chakras and kundalini, and they all talk about like the superpower, like that state of unconditional love. And that's like so interesting, I've been thinking about that a lot. Like the most people who channel like whoever is there, like about an energy and all of that, and the people who are all about science and how to be regulated and how to like have like a healthy body, they all talk about this, and it's like so interesting for me.
Very good. Well, I'm so happy to hear that. And yes, I believe that is our core. But it's not easy to feel it or to be aware of it when we are so overwhelmed by the problems. And again, because the brain is designed to focus on the danger. So then we forget about it. We forget who we are. And we forget we have this power because that's survival. So for those who don't know the superpower yet, the book is called You Have a Superpower and it's available on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description as well. So keep reminding yourself of that as well, Camilla.
Absolutely.
Keep that light turned up, the superpower. Very good. Good job, sweetheart. So how do you feel now when you think about those people that you were talking about, that you keep seeing?
I feel better. I'm just thinking about all of them. I had like a moment now of thinking about all of these like people. I realize that I'm listening like the essence of them, and they are all in this like age bracket. So that's why I'm thinking that literally, like, I was thinking about people that I follow that they are older, and I can think about maybe one or two, but the essence of others are extremely young, and that's why I'm feeling this way. And also another thing that came up is that a lot of like these like people, they have like YouTube channels, right? So they started really young to have like an audience, and they were able to monetize that. But most people who are teens, who don't have, for example, a YouTube channel, they are not having like businesses, like factories or things like that. Some of them do, but there are more teenagers with YouTube channels that teenagers with like big businesses, so that also has like a lot to do with that, I think.
Absolutely. And one of the things I would suggest, so do the work on your childhood and stuff first, but one of the things I would suggest as well is start deliberately following people who only became successful later in life, and there's plenty of them.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So see if you can find some inspirational people who only really, came into their own later in life, and a variety of things, so some may have social media success, others may have other things they're successful with, and that kind of thing, just to give your brain a more realistic variety of what's possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Very good. Good job. All right, Camilla. Well, thank you so much for the questions and for being here. It's lovely to be in the room with you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome, sweetheart. Good job, you. All right, everyone. So that's it for this week. And I will see you same time, same place next week. Lots of love to all of you. Bye-bye now.